Saturday mornings were Sarah's favorite. The sun peeked through her bedroom window, painting stripes across her cozy room. She loved the quiet, the feeling that the whole day stretched out before her like a brand new coloring book. Today was no different. She'd slept in a little, finally rolling out of bed around 10. The house was quiet. Mom was at a conference out of town. Sarah padded downstairs, humming a song she'd heard on the radio. In the kitchen, she grabbed a yogurt from the fridge. Still in her favorite light blue tank top and comfy denim short shorts, she curled up on the sofa with a book. The tank top was soft and worn, the shorts, perfectly broken in. It was her do-nothing outfit, perfect for a lazy Saturday. The book was a mystery, full of secrets and hidden clues. She was just getting to the good part when the rumble in her tummy made her realize she was hungry. A quick glance at the clock showed it was almost lunchtime. Maybe pizza? She thought, already reaching for her phone. This was the perfect day to relax, eat good food, and dive into her book. Everything was perfect. Just as she tapped the pizza place's number into her phone, the doorbell rang. A little frown appeared on her face. She wasn't expecting anyone. Maybe it was Mrs. Peterson from next door, wanting to borrow some sugar again. "Coming!" she called out, setting her phone down on the coffee table. She smoothed her shorts, though it was probably unnecessary. It wasn't like she was trying to impress Mrs. Peterson. She walked towards the front door, her bare feet padding softly on the wooden floor. As she got closer, she peeked through the peephole. Her eyes widened in surprise. It wasn't Mrs. Peterson. It was a man. A man she vaguely recognized, but couldn't quite place. He looked a little nervous, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Curiosity piqued, she unlocked the door and pulled it open. "Hello?" she asked, her voice a little uncertain. The man's eyes met hers, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. She still couldn't quite remember who he was. He looked older than she remembered, and she realized she was taller than him now. Who could this be? "Sarah?" the man asked, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. That name sounded familiar. Where had she heard it before? Suddenly it clicked. Mark. Her mom's ex-boyfriend. The one she barely remembered from when she was little. He seemed so much bigger back then, almost like a giant. Now, he just looked ordinary. Older, with lines around his eyes she didn't remember seeing before. "Mark," she said, surprised at how easily the name came to her now. "Why, I hardly recognized you." A small smile flickered across his face. "Yeah, well, it's been a while," he said, his gaze drifting over her for a moment before quickly darting away. You've grown up." She couldn't help but notice the way he looked at her. It wasn't the same way her friends' dads looked at her. There was something different there, something that made her a little uncomfortable, but also something else. She wasn't sure what it was, but it definitely made her more aware of her tank top and shorts. And of him. This was all getting a bit strange. He was holding a stack of cardboard boxes, tied together with rope. I have these for your mom," he said, gesturing towards the boxes. "Old stuff from when we. You know." "Oh," Sarah said, a little surprised. "Mom's not here. She's at a conference out of town." Mark's eyebrows shot up. "Oh. I didn't realize." He shuffled his feet again, looking even more uncomfortable. "Well, I can just leave them on the porch, I guess." He started to set the boxes down, but Sarah stopped him. "No, that's okay," she said, a sudden thought popping into her head. "I can take them. But, do you want to come in for a minute? I could get you some water or something. It's pretty hot out." She wasn't sure why she was offering. Part of her just wanted to be polite. But another part, a more curious part, wanted to see what would happen. She wanted to understand why he was looking at her that way, and why it made her feel so strange. Mark hesitated. "I don't want to impose," he said, but she could see a flicker of interest in his eyes. "It's no problem, really," Sarah insisted, giving him a small smile. I was just about to make some lemonade. I can share. She stepped back, opening the door wider and gesturing for him to come in. Besides, she added, her eyes twinkling mischievously, it's the least I can do since you brought all this stuff over. What was she doing? Mark hesitated for another moment, glancing at the boxes, then back at Sarah. The lure of the cool lemonade and the chance to. Well, he wasn't entirely sure what, but something made him agree. Okay, he said a little too quickly. Lemonade sounds great. He picked up the boxes again, and Sarah led the way inside. The house felt different with him in it. Bigger somehow. Or maybe it was just her that felt different. She led him to the kitchen and pointed to a chair at the small table. You can put them down there, she said, indicating the floor next to the table. Mark carefully lowered the boxes, a slight grunt escaping his lips. So, Sarah said, turning to the refrigerator. Lemonade it is. Homemade or store-bought? Homemade sounds. Nice, Mark said, watching her as she took out lemons and sugar. She moved with a confidence he didn't remember. Back then, she was just a little girl, always hiding behind her mom's legs. Now she was, well, a young woman. A very attractive young woman. He quickly averted his gaze, feeling a blush creep up his neck. This was a mistake. He shouldn't have come in. What was he thinking? Sarah expertly squeezed the lemons, the scent filling the small kitchen. She glanced at Mark, who was now staring intently at his hands, his knuckles white. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. So, she said, breaking the silence, how long has it been? Since you and Mom, I mean. Mark looked up, startled. Oh. A long time. He stammered. 7 years, I think. Wow, Sarah said, feigning surprise. That's almost a lifetime. I was like 10. I barely remember you. She knew she remembered him more than she was letting on, but she wanted to see his reaction. His eyes flickered over her again, a quick, assessing glance that lingered just a little too long on her legs. She saw it, and a small, knowing smile played on her lips. He was definitely noticing. Well, he said, clearing his throat. You were a little kid back then. Things change. They do, Sarah agreed, her voice soft and almost challenging. She poured the lemonade into 2 glasses, adding a few ice cubes. People grow up. She handed him a glass, her fingers brushing against his. The small contact sent a strange shiver down her spine, and she wondered if he felt it too. The air in the kitchen felt suddenly thick and heavy. Mark took a long sip of the lemonade, the tartness doing little to quench the sudden dryness in his mouth. This is good, he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. He needed to leave. Now. So, Sarah said, leaning against the counter, her arms crossed. What's in the boxes? Just old stuff, Mark said, his voice tight. Pictures, mostly. Some of your mom's old clothes. Things like that. Anything interesting? She asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. She knew exactly what she was doing, pushing him, testing him. And part of her was enjoying it. Mark shifted in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. I haven't really looked, he lied. He'd glanced through them quickly before bringing them over, and he'd seen a few photos of Sarah as a little girl. Cute, innocent. Nothing like the woman standing before him now. He stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. Well, I should probably get going, he said, his voice strained. I have a lot to do today. Sarah didn't move. She just stood there, watching him, a knowing smile on her face. Okay, she said softly. Thanks for bringing the boxes. As he started to walk towards the door, she took a single step closer, effectively blocking his path. It was nice seeing you again, Mark. He stopped, his hand hovering over the doorknob. He was so close to freedom, but she was blocking his way. He could smell the lemonade on her breath, a sweet, summery scent that only added to his unease. Yeah, he said, his voice barely a whisper. It was Good to see you too, Sarah. He tried to smile, but it felt forced and unnatural. Sarah tilted her head, her eyes searching his. You know, she said, her voice low and husky. Mom never really talked about you. After. You know. Mark swallowed hard. There wasn't much to say, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. It was a long time ago. But, Sarah persisted, weren't you sad? When it ended? She took another step closer, closing the distance between them even further. He could feel the heat radiating from her body, and he knew he was in trouble. Big trouble. Sarah, he said, his voice pleading now, I really need to go. Just one more question, she said, her eyes locking onto his. Did you ever think about me? After you and Mom broke up? He couldn't answer. He just stood there, frozen, caught in her gaze. He knew he shouldn't be here. He knew this was wrong. But he couldn't seem to move, couldn't seem to break free from her spell. The tension in the small hallway was almost unbearable. What would he do? Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The only sound was the gentle hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Mark's heart pounded in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. He knew he had to say something, anything, to break the spell. Sarah, he finally managed to croak out. That's not a fair question. Why not? She challenged, her voice still soft, but with an edge of steel beneath it. Is it because the answer is something you don't want to admit? He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. It's complicated, he mumbled. Life is complicated, she said, stepping even closer, so close that he could feel the warmth of her breath on his cheek. But that doesn't mean we can't be honest. He closed his eyes, fighting the urge to reach out and touch her. He knew it was wrong, so very wrong. She was practically a child, and he was. Well, he was old enough to know better. Sarah, please, he whispered, his voice filled with desperation. You need to stop this. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and gently touched his arm, her fingers sending a jolt of electricity through his body. He flinched, pulling away from her touch as if he'd been burned. He felt so bad. What was he thinking? I think, she whispered, that you're scared. He opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her, and he saw something in her gaze that he couldn't quite understand. It was a mixture of curiosity, defiance, and something else. Something that made his heart ache with a longing he hadn't felt in years. And he knew, with a sinking feeling, that she was right. He was scared. Terrified. He was terrified of what he was feeling, and even more terrified of what she might do next. A battle raged inside Mark. One part of him, the rational part, screamed at him to run. To get out of this house, away from this girl, before he did something he would truly regret. This was wrong on so many levels. She was too young. She was his ex-girlfriend's daughter. He had no right to feel this way. But another part of him, a darker, more primal part, was captivated. He was drawn to her youthful energy, her confidence, her willingness to push boundaries. It had been so long since he had felt anything like this, any spark of excitement or desire. His life had become so predictable, so safe. And Sarah, with her tank top and shorts and her knowing smile, represented everything he had been missing. He hated himself for feeling this way. He knew he was being a fool, a weak, pathetic fool. But he couldn't help it. He was caught in her web, and he didn't know how to break free. He glanced at the boxes on the floor, a stark reminder of the past, of his relationship with Sarah's mother. How could he even think about betraying her like this? He was a terrible person. He looked back at Sarah, her eyes still fixed on his, and he knew he had to make a choice. He could either succumb to his desires and risk destroying everything, or he could find the strength to walk away. The problem was, he didn't know if he had that strength. Every atom in his body was telling him to stay. What should he do? You look thirsty, Sarah said, her voice breaking through his internal struggle. Another glass of lemonade? She gestured towards the kitchen, her eyes sparkling with an almost predatory glint. It was a test, he knew it. She was seeing how far she could push him, how much control she had over him. And the scary part was, he wasn't sure anymore. "No, thank you," he said, his voice firmer this time. "I really have to go." He reached for the doorknob again, determined to break free from her spell. But Sarah wasn't done yet. She moved closer again, her body almost touching his. "Or maybe," she whispered, her breath tickling his ear, "you'd prefer something stronger? I think I have some iced tea in the fridge." He closed his eyes, fighting the urge to give in. "Sarah," he pleaded, "please don't do this." She stepped back, a hint of disappointment flickering across her face. "Do what, Mark?" she asked, her voice innocent now. "I'm just being hospitable. Is there something wrong with offering a guest a drink?" He opened his eyes and looked at her, trying to decipher her intentions. Was she really just teasing him? Or was there something more to it? He couldn't tell. "Yes," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "There is something wrong with it. I shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be doing this." He finally managed to turn the doorknob and pull the door open. A rush of warm air filled the hallway, a welcome escape from the suffocating tension inside the house. He needed to get away. Now. "Goodbye, Sarah," he said, his voice strained. He stepped out onto the porch, leaving her standing in the doorway, a small, enigmatic smile on her face. He almost ran to his car, feeling like he had just escaped from a dangerous trap. He needed to process this. Sarah watched as Mark practically sprinted to his car, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. She closed the door, locking it securely, and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. What had just happened? She wasn't entirely sure, but she knew one thing: she had definitely shaken things up. She turned and looked at the boxes sitting on the floor. Curiosity tugged at her. What was in them? What secrets did they hold about her mom's past, about Mark's past? She knelt down and picked up the top box, carefully untying the rope that held it together. She lifted the lid and peered inside. It was filled with photos. Old photos, faded and yellowed with age. She picked one up. It was a picture of her mom, younger than Sarah had ever seen her, laughing and carefree. She was standing next to Mark, his arm around her, both of them looking happy and in love. It was strange seeing them together like that, like they belonged together. She sifted through the other photos, each one a snapshot of a time she barely remembered. There were pictures of them on vacation, at parties, and just hanging out at home. They looked like any other couple, happy and in love. It was hard to imagine them ever breaking up. She found a photo of herself, a little girl with pigtails and missing teeth, sitting on Mark's lap. He was smiling at her, his eyes full of affection. It was a strange feeling, seeing him like that, seeing him as someone who had once been a part of her family. A wave of sadness washed over her. What had happened? Why had they broken up? What had changed? She had to know. As Sarah looked at the photo of herself on Mark's lap, a strange impulse took over her. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Mark's number. She hadn't deleted it, even though she hadn't seen or spoken to him in years. With a deep breath, she pressed the call button. The phone rang a few times before he answered, his voice hesitant. "Hello? Mark?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "It's Sarah." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Sarah," he said finally, his voice surprised. "What's wrong?" I opened the boxes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I saw the photos." Another silence. "Oh," he said softly. "I should have warned you. They look so happy," Sarah said, her voice choked with emotion. "What happened, Mark? Why did you break up?" He sighed. "It's a long story, Sarah," he said. "Maybe we shouldn't talk about this. Please," she begged, tears welling up in her eyes. "I need to know." He hesitated for a moment, then relented. "Okay," he said softly. "Come outside. I'll tell you." Sarah hung up the phone and ran out the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She saw Mark standing by his car, his head down, looking lost and forlorn. As she approached him, she couldn't help but wonder if she was making a mistake. But she had to know the truth. And somehow, she knew that Mark was the only one who could tell her. She got closer. "Hi," she said quietly. He looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and longing. "Hi, Sarah," he said. "Let's talk." He opened the car door. Where were they going? Sarah hesitated for a moment, looking at the open car door. It felt like a point of no return. Getting into that car with Mark would change everything. But she couldn't resist the pull of the unknown, the need to understand what had happened between him and her mom. She glanced back at the house, feeling a pang of guilt. What if her mom found out? What would she think? But then she remembered the photos, the happy faces, the love that had once existed. She owed it to herself, and maybe even to her mom, to find out what had gone wrong. She took a deep breath and got into the car. Mark closed the door behind her, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. He didn't say anything, just started the engine and pulled away from the curb. As they drove, Sarah couldn't help but notice how close Mark was. His arm brushed against hers as he shifted gears, sending a shiver down her spine. The air in the car was thick with unspoken tension, a mixture of curiosity, anticipation, and something else. Something that felt dangerous and exciting all at once. She glanced at Mark, trying to read his expression. He looked serious, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. She wondered what he was thinking, what he was feeling. Was he as nervous as she was? They drove in silence for several minutes, the only sound the hum of the engine and the soft whisper of the tires on the pavement. Sarah had no idea where they were going, but she knew that whatever happened, her life would never be the same. The past was about to be revealed. What would it tell her? And what would she do with it? What did Mark want? The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, as they drove further and further away from Sarah's house. The familiar streets gave way to unfamiliar ones, and Sarah started to feel a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Where were they going? And why hadn't Mark said a word? She cleared her throat, breaking the silence. "So," she said, trying to sound casual, "where are we going?" Mark glanced at her, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "I thought we could talk somewhere more private," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Somewhere we won't be interrupted." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Interrupted?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Who would interrupt us?" Mark didn't answer. He just kept driving, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. The landscape outside the window became more rural, the houses fewer and farther between. Sarah started to feel a sense of unease creep over her. This wasn't what she had expected. She just wanted to know the truth about her mom and Mark. She didn't want whatever this was. She looked at Mark again, trying to gauge his intentions. He still looked serious, but there was something else there too, something that made her skin crawl. She suddenly realized that she was alone in a car with a man she barely knew, a man who had a history with her mother, a man who was clearly attracted to her. A wave of panic washed over her. She had made a mistake. A big mistake. She was in danger. What could she do? Just as Sarah was about to demand that Mark turn the car around, he suddenly pulled over to the side of the road. He stopped the car, but didn't turn it off. "I can't do this," he said, his voice strained. He ran a hand through his hair, looking agitated. This was a mistake. A really big mistake. Sarah stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't have brought you out here," he said, avoiding her gaze. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry." He turned to her, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and desperation. "I can't tell you about your mom," he said. "It's not my place. And I can't be around you. Not like this." He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I'm going to take you home," he said, his voice firm now. And then I'm going to leave you alone. I promise. Sarah didn't say anything. She was still trying to process what was happening. 1 minute she was terrified, and the next, Mark was apologizing and promising to take her home. What had changed? Had he realized how wrong this was? Or was there something else going on? Mark started the engine and pulled back onto the road, turning the car around and heading back in the direction they had come. Sarah watched him, her mind racing. She still wanted to know the truth about her mom and Mark. But now, more than anything, she just wanted to get home. And she wanted to understand what had just happened. She needed to process this. The ride back was silent and tense. Mark dropped Sarah off at the curb in front of her house without a word, not even making eye contact. He simply sped away, leaving her standing there, feeling shaken and confused. Sarah walked slowly to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped inside. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. The house felt different now, not the safe and peaceful sanctuary it had been that morning. It felt tainted somehow. What had just happened? She replayed the events of the past few hours in her mind, trying to make sense of it all. Had she been naive? Had she misread the situation? Had she been playing a dangerous game without realizing it? She thought about Mark's lingering gaze, his nervous stammering, his sudden change of heart. Was he genuinely remorseful? Or was he just scared? And what about her own feelings? Had she just been testing the waters, curious to see how far she could push him? Or was there something more? Was she, on some level, attracted to him too? She shuddered at the thought. It was wrong, so wrong. He was her mom's ex-boyfriend. He was much older than her. She shouldn't be feeling anything for him. But she couldn't deny the thrill she had felt, the excitement of pushing boundaries, the power of knowing she had caught his attention. She had been playing with fire, and she had almost gotten burned. She needed to talk to someone. What should she do? The pizza forgotten and the book untouched, she was changed forever. She walked back into the living room and knelt down beside the boxes. She picked up the photo of herself sitting on Mark's lap, studying it intently. He looked so kind, so caring. It was hard to reconcile that image with the man she had just been in the car with, the man who had scared her. She sifted through the other photos again, searching for clues, trying to understand what had happened, what had changed. She saw a picture of her mom and Mark laughing, their arms around each other, looking like they were the only two people in the world. What had broken that bond? What had torn them apart? She found a letter tucked inside one of the boxes. It was addressed to her mom, in Mark's handwriting. Her heart pounded in her chest as she carefully unfolded it. It was a love letter, filled with passionate words and heartfelt promises. It was hard to believe that the man who had written those words could have ever hurt her mom. She felt a surge of anger, directed at both Mark and her mom. Why hadn't they told her the truth? Why had they kept this secret from her for so long? She deserved to know. She looked at the photos one last time, a mixture of confusion and intrigue on her face. The day had started out so innocently, so peacefully. And now, everything had changed. She had more questions than answers, and she didn't know where to turn. The truth felt very far away. The memory box was now a Pandora's box. What was she going to do? Sarah knew she couldn't keep this to herself. She needed to talk to someone who could help her make sense of everything that had happened. Her first instinct was to call her mom, but she hesitated. What would she say? How would she explain everything? And what if her mom got angry, not at Mark but at her? She decided to call Chloe, her best friend. Chloe was always there for her, no matter what. She was a good listener, and she always gave her honest advice. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Chloe's name. She took a deep breath and pressed the call button. The phone rang a few times before Chloe answered, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hey, Sarah! What's up?" "Chloe," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "I need to talk to you. Something really weird happened today." "Weird how?" Chloe asked, her voice immediately becoming concerned. Are you okay? I don't know, Sarah said, tears welling up in her eyes. It's a long story. Can I come over? Of course, Chloe said without hesitation. Come over right now. I'll make us some popcorn and we can talk all about it. Thanks, Chloe, Sarah said, a small smile forming on her face. You're the best. Anytime, girl, Chloe said. Now get over here. I'm dying to know what happened. Sarah hung up the phone and grabbed her purse. As she headed out the door, she couldn't help but wonder what Chloe would say when she heard the whole story. And she couldn't help but worry about what would happen when her mom came home. Should she tell her about Mark? Or should she keep it a secret? She really didn't know what to do. As Sarah reached for the doorknob, a strange compulsion washed over her. She paused, her hand hovering in the air, and glanced out the living room window. She scanned the street, her eyes searching for any sign of Mark. She knew it was foolish. He was long gone. He had made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with her. But still, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her, that he was still somehow a part of her life. She looked up and down the street, but she didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Just the usual Saturday afternoon traffic, the kids playing in their yards, the old lady walking her dog. Everything looked normal, but Sarah knew that nothing would ever be normal again. She finally tore her gaze away from the window and opened the door. As she stepped outside, she couldn't help but feel a sense of vulnerability, a sense that she was being watched. She glanced around one last time, but she still didn't see anything. She walked quickly to her car, got inside, and locked the doors. As she drove away from her house, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. She checked her rearview mirror several times, but she didn't see any cars that looked suspicious. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was out there, somewhere, watching her. And she wondered what he was thinking, what he was planning. Was he regretting his decision to leave her alone? Or was he relieved to be free of her? She had no idea. But she knew that she would never be able to forget him. He had changed her life in ways she couldn't even begin to understand. And she knew that she would never look at the world the same way again. The memory of that morning will never escape her mind. What would she do next? As Sarah drove towards Chloe's house, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The day had been a whirlwind of emotions, a roller coaster of curiosity, fear, and confusion. She had opened a door to the past, and she had no idea what lay on the other side. She knew that telling Chloe everything would help, but it wouldn't solve all her problems. She still needed to talk to her mom. She still needed to understand why Mark had acted the way he had. And she still needed to figure out what her own feelings were. She also couldn't shake the feeling that Mark would be back. He had seemed so conflicted, so torn. Had he really given up? Or was he just biding his time, waiting for the right moment to try again? She had no idea. But she knew that she couldn't let her guard down. She had to be prepared for anything. The peaceful Saturday morning was a distant memory. Her life had changed forever, and she knew that the days ahead would be filled with uncertainty and challenges. She could only hope that she was strong enough to face them. As she pulled into Chloe's driveway, she took a deep breath and tried to put on a brave face. She couldn't let Chloe see how scared she was. She needed to be strong, for both of them. But as she got out of the car and walked towards Chloe's front door, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into the unknown. And she couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was still out there, watching her, waiting. The game had only just begun. The secrets had only just begun to unravel. The door to the past was now open. And nothing would ever be the same. The end? Not even close.